I'll make sure it's going to be worth your while. So thank you for being here. How's the conference so far? Good? Lots of good stuff? Yeah, the real challenge is when you go back, how do you make all this happen, right? So the key thing that you have to consider to make all the SharePoint goodness work is in the area of requirements. My name is Dux Raymond Sai, for those that haven't met. Great to meet you. Feel free to call me Dux. And that's my real name. It's the Latin origin of the word Duke. So I'm supposed to be of some royalty. If I was, I wouldn't be here either. So. But it's all good. Very excited because this is something that's near and dear to my heart. I've been working with this technology since 2000, even before it was called SharePoint. I come from an assembler background. I used to do coding in assembler. For all those blank stares there, you weren't born yet. That's why. But I've been passionate about this technology, and one of the most obvious things to me these days that while SharePoint is a great platform, that's not the most challenging thing about SharePoint. The hardest part about SharePoint is what? What? Adoption. Does it have anything to do with SharePoint? No, right? So it's something like this. You know, your users tell you SharePoint sucks. No, you go back and look at them and say it doesn't suck, you suck. It's a freaking tool. So what we're going to do in the next hour, gang, is I will dissect this idea of developing relevant requirements. And when I say dissect, I'm not talking about academic stuff here. I'm talking about real-world stuff that works. I'm not saying it's the guidebook, but it's stuff that I've been doing in the last 10, 12 years. And I guess apparently it works, so I'd like to share those with you. One of the most heartbreaking things that I always come across is when I work with a lot of failed SharePoint projects, and again, when I say failed, it has nothing to do with technology. It's the first thing I ask is, can you give me your requirements? They go, okay, sure. This is our requirements for a SharePoint project. I look at that darn thing. 2 web front end, 1 SQL Server back end, 8 EFS. Yeah, that's cool, but I want to know more about your business requirements. What about user requirements? You can do that? Of course. So gang, tell you what, to get the conversation going, I just want to break down and explain why requirements is important and also why it's so hard, okay? A lot of times I work with customers, when I talk to them and say, let's spend some time planning and requirements, some of my customers say, we don't need that, that's sissy work. Real men, we just install the thing, right? And you know how that goes. So I want to make my case and show you why this is hard. I need 4 volunteers, please. 4 brave souls. Come on, raise your hand. Sir, come up here. Sir, come up. We need a good mix. I'm going to volunteer you. Come up. Maybe one person. Karen? I think I saw Karen. Do you mind, Karen? Come up, Karen. All right. So here's what we're going to do. And I'm going to simulate what happens in your world when you deal with requirements, right? So you'll be a developer. You'll be an analyst, right? You're business analyst. They gather requirements, yes? You'll be a developer, and you'll be a business analyst. Is that cool? So for developers, can you please go out the room and make sure you don't hear what we're going to say? All right, chop, chop, go out. I'll call you in an hour. Just kidding. Please stay out of the room and make sure you don't hear anything, okay? Now, so here's the deal. Classic SharePoint project, large or small. I'm the customer and I go, analyst. Okay, so here's something I think I want, right? Here's something I think I want. Did they give me markers? Okay, good. So here's something I think I want. So what I need you to do, so as I'm explaining, visualizing this, I kind of drew it up. This is the SharePoint project I want, yeah? So your job now is obviously to write requirements around it, to kind of describe this thing. You with me? Y'all with me? So here's the problem. We've got constraints. I don't have enough budget, so I can only do so much for this SharePoint project. So because I don't have budget, you're constrained that you cannot use the word star, triangle, and square. All right? Budget's limited. So I'm going to give you 1 minute each. describe this thing that I want without using square, triangle, and star. And once we're done, we're going to take the requirements you wrote and have the developers come in, draw it for me. We're good? You set? Got the rules? Everybody got with it? All right, so let's do it. Start writing your requirements. Got to set the mood here.
What are the words we can't use again?
Star, square, and triangle. So describe this thing without using star, square, and triangle. We got 30 more seconds. Yeah, no, Jennifer, you can use 30 seconds. Do it now. Now, just to let you know, I actually do this with my customers. A lot of those customers don't take the requirements seriously. It doesn't take too long. It's a great icebreaker, too. All right, I'll give you 10 more seconds. All right, done. Okay, thank you. Let's give them a big round of applause. Two developers and make sure they're still out there. Oh yeah, they went home, right? Yes. Actually, I'll pause this thing. All right. Okay, developers, come on, come on. So here's what happened, developers. I was a customer. I asked the analysts to write requirements for a SharePoint project that I'd like, okay? So they wrote the requirements down, and your job is to draw. You see those two boards up there? Your job is to draw whatever this picture may be based on those requirements. Okay, so please feel free to go up the stage. Yes, and then you have, we just need to get this done soon, so you have 2 minutes to do this, okay? So based on those requirements, draw what this thing is, what the SharePoint thing is. Typical developer. Guys, you got a bunch of seats up front. You guys come up. Now we know which developer we're not going to hire, right? Yeah, you got 30 more seconds. All right, good. That's cool. Good. Like a geometry. Yeah. All right. Let's give Jason a big round of applause. All right. Thank you. I actually keep that. Thank you, Julie. Let's give Julie a big round of applause. All right. Now, that took what? 3-4 minutes, right? I tell you, it's a great activity when you want to get started with a SharePoint project. So, a couple of things. In fairness to the developers, I wanted to show the developer Julie and Jason what I described to the analysts. Now, Close? No? So, observers. Why do you think this happens? Anyone? No communication. With who? Be more specific. With me, right? So when I told the analyst to start drawing, did I say you can't ask me a question? Did I say that? And that's one fundamental flaw when we start building requirements for SharePoint. Yeah, we're also gung-ho about requirements gathering, but you're not doing anything better than taking orders. How do you like your SharePoint? You sign surveys, wikis, want supersize it? That's BCS. Next! That's what we do. We don't talk. Great concept, right? This is IT talk. What else? Why do you think this happened? Yes, sir.
Because the two sides don't speak common language. They don't have the common terminology to describe what it is.
So when you say two sides, which side? Customer, business?
And users and developers.
End user and developer, right? So it's just a clear path, and again, nobody asks. Can I talk to my developer? And gang, this is so true with SharePoint. I mean, in a lot of projects, but more so with SharePoint. Because as we all know, the promise of SharePoint is it's going to empower the business. It's going to help the business. Yet we always take this very techno-centric approach as how we would in other IT projects. And that's why you spend $1 million, $2 million just with this nice tool parked in the garage that's just a file dumping ground where the business is not getting any value. Y'all with me? So here's what we're going to do, gang. In the remaining time that we have, I'm going to dissect this idea of requirements development, but I'm going to shape it around how do you do this effectively that provides business value and make it practical as well. This session is being recorded. I record all my 1-hour session, and I'm going to show a lot of stuff, PowerPoint, checklists, templates, what have you, and I'll make sure everybody gets a copy of this. I know some of you are jotting down notes, but it's a good refresher to review it. So what I'm going to do, I'll pass these session review sheets around, or session cards. Just fill it out. Once we're done, I'll take this so that I'll send all this stuff that I'm going to show to you. Okay? All right. So y'all ready? Let's talk about this. Okay. So what are requirements? Again, a lot of us, when we think requirements, we think it's something academic. It's something that you have to get certification for. It's something that only true analysts do. Actually, it's not. Especially around the world of SharePoint, really, requirements has to subscribe to a couple of things. Something wanted or needed. Okay, that's important. It's not because it's cool. So if your marketing department comes up to you and say, make SharePoint not look like SharePoint, ask a very profound question. Why? And if you get a silent answer like this, change it up. ¿Por qué? If it still doesn't work, start other languages too. But why? What does this mean? We have oh, thus we're going to do a new marketing campaign, public-facing site. It's going to grow internal data that we have on SharePoint. Okay, fine. Custom branding, I get it. It has to be documented because if it's not documented, it's not going to happen, or nobody's accountable for it. When we talk about SharePoint, we have to stop passing the buck. What do you mean, docs? Nobody owns SharePoint, really. You go in your organization, who's responsible for SharePoint? IT. You go to IT. No, it's not me, him. I got busy tied up with this project. Just stay now. Enough of that. Designate a chokeable neck. No, you find that funny, but it's true. Who needs to own this, right? There are constraints. It doesn't do everything. The promise of SharePoint that it's the next best thing to slice bread is fallacy. I've been in organizations where I haven't said anything here. We can SharePoint that. There's something that SharePoint can do for that. No. So, what's so special about SharePoint? I had a great session yesterday with a bunch of folks. We had a one-day workshop, And somebody raised a really good question. I think Steve Steve, are you here from ADP? But he's like, Doc, it's so hard, you know? I'm in my company, I'm the SharePoint expert. When people ask me, what is SharePoint? I get stuck. You ask 10 people what SharePoint is, you get 10,000 freaking answers. All of them are either right or wrong, or doesn't matter. Y'all with me? Because SharePoint is a huge platform. It's an abstract technology that has to be shaped with specific need. Now, when we talk about requirements, again, this is not the official guide. It's just the Doc's guide of requirements for SharePoint, which works. So I'm going to share this. What I realized for all this to work, when you talk about requirements, it always has to start with a business. What are the business needs? I know you hear this, but I'm going to show you an example that will actually prove this. Based on that business need, what are the user requirements to support that business need? Y'all with me? Then talk about the technology that will fulfill those user requirements. And that's where all the tech stuff comes in. You know how many times I would go into organizations and help them? One of the work we do a lot is in the area of sustainable adoption. We want to make sure that the investment you have in SharePoint not only gets adopted initially, but sustains through time. But one of the key questions I always ask is, okay, why do you have a small server farm? Why do you have 2 web front ends? Why did you integrate this to SAP? I don't know. I was just told to do this. How does this help address the business? I don't know. It's just there. So here's something I want to show you. I showed this example yesterday, but I want to make sure I show this example because this is something practical and something small. Now, I know a lot of you may not be involved in large deployments. Some of you may be involved in your department or your group. So I want to show a simple example, but you can extrapolate how this works in a larger scheme of things. So, okay, Docs, how do you get this business user technology stuff going on here? Okay, so here's a very specific example. In fact, let me kind of paint the picture here. So this happened to one of our customers a few years ago. They've got SharePoint, and at any point in time in this organization, they have 100 projects. And it so happens they use email and Excel and network share to manage and run their projects. Does that sound familiar? So they decided it's about time to take advantage of SharePoint other than making it a file dump. So we went in there, we helped them, and the first business need we wanted to address is to take advantage of SharePoint for project management. In fact, there's a great book for that. Make sure you buy it. And it's created by the Sun's College Fund. No, just kidding. For being here, I'll send you an ebook copy. Okay, I'll give you a code you can download from Microsoft. All right? Just make sure you put your names in. So this company, so we helped them. So fast forward, after we implemented the solution, the idea now is every project would have a project site. Everything about the project would be centralized there. Project managers, project team would go there, communication artifact, tasks, it's all good. No more email, Excel. Y'all follow me? One thing we found out about this organization, at the end of the month, every project manager has to send an Excel file to Miss Betty in accounting. So imagine every month Miss Betty would get 100 Excel sheets via email that she has to drag to her desktop, put together a summarized report of project expenses. Y'all follow me? You know Miss Betty, right? So I talked to Miss Betty, I said, Miss Betty, so how much time do you spend doing this? She goes, 6 hours on the average. I've been doing this in the last 8 years. It's part of my job. Although sometimes I have to stay overtime to get all this stuff together. Okay? I go, Miss Betty, what if I help you and show you a way that you can cut down time? Meaning instead of spending 6 hours, you now will spend 3 hours. Is that something you would be interested in? She goes, of course, but. I go, but what? As long as I can do it in Excel only. I don't want to learn anything new because I'm retiring in 2 years. Now you know, Miss Betty. I go, Miss Betty, good news. I'm actually going to show you stuff in Excel. It's featured in Excel. In fact, it's been there since 2003. So here's the deal, Miss Betty. What I'm proposing is we're going to cut down this manual email stuff. What I'm proposing, Miss Betty, is once we finish this up, project managers would go to their project site, put in the expense information on that project site where everything else is, no more emailing, and then as soon as they put that in, automatically it's going to show up on your desktop in Microsoft Excel in your My Documents folder. Is that something that would be interesting for you? She goes, of course. Okay, so here's the example. So think about that little project. For example, how often someone in finance have to deal with collecting a bunch of Excel files regularly and consolidating a single management report? So we know the need, there's a pain. This whole manual collecting Excel files, while she's been doing 8 years, if we can optimize that, great. Okay, so how is this done? So, it's the wrong timing. It was for 30 minutes after, I'm going to start dancing here. No. So, I'm going to show you this solution, and then I'll go back to the requirements. So let's say this is 2013, in case you haven't seen. So let's say this is the project site. Project managers come here, and they would put all the project-related stuff, right? So you've got your tasks, your documents, calendar, all that good stuff. So here's the idea, gang. The idea now is I'm going to tell Miss Betty, okay, Miss Betty, here's what we're going to do. This is for the project, whatever it was called. So the idea is I'm going to fire up Excel, and I'm going to pre-populate some data. Table, so let's say we bought some table, that was $200. We bought some chairs, that was $300. Okay? And then I'm going to highlight this column and just change it up. Make it currency, so it'll format correctly. There we go. So all this is out of the box. In fact, everything I'm going to show you is out of the box. So as soon as I populated some sample data, what I'm going to do next, gang, is I'm going to take this information and convert it to what's called an Excel table. Now that it's an Excel table, check this out. Publish and allow sync to SharePoint. Y'all see that? Now, some of you may be wondering, well, Doc, what version of Excel are you using? I'm using 2013, but this thing I'm showing you has been there since Excel 03 and SharePoint 03. It's a 10-year-old feature, okay? Out of the box. Now, what I'm going to do next, friends, is so now it's asking, where do you want to put this expense information? I want to put it in this executive project site, executive presentation project site. So I just copy the address, and I'm going to enter that information. I'm going to call this let's call this executive presentation expenses, project expenses. Okay. So let me hit publish. So as soon as I hit publish, gang, what's going to happen? Excel will contact that SharePoint site, authenticate me, just to make sure I can do what I'm trying to do. Create a custom list, take that data, connect it. Y'all follow me? You can do this in Excel 03, SharePoint 03, Excel 07, SharePoint 07, 2010, and this guy. Now, once it's done, here's what it's going to look like. So before I do anything, I'm going to bring up my project site, and voila. You see the same set of expense information that I generated in Excel now published to the project site. So what's the deal? So here's the deal. Now that the expense information is there, the new process, so let me go to my Mac environment just to show you sites, executive, all right. I think that's the right URL. Did I copy this thing? Okay, there you go. Did it show up? Okay. Oh, there you go. So I'm going to go to my Mac environment, and I'll pull up that expense information. There you go. So as you can see, actually, that's not the right one. That's the other demo I did. EP project expenses. Okay, there you go. So now the new process is project managers. They can go to the project site and put in their expenses. Y'all with me so far? The beauty with 2013, for those in case that don't know this, I'm on my Mac, I'm using Safari, and notice what I'm doing here. I'm in a custom list, entering data in what seems to be the datasheet view. If you didn't get the memo, the datasheet view now is available across browser, across platform. In the prior version of SharePoint, it was stuck with IE. Is that cool? It's good stuff. So we could do this on an iPad or other tablet device or mobile device as well. So now the project manager or somebody in the team entered some expense. Let's go back to the story here. Miss Betty in accounting, I just told her, look, so as soon as somebody enters that data, an alert is turned on. You get an alert saying, hey, somebody just entered an expense information. She can fire back up her Excel sheet, and it's synchronized. And as soon as she synchronizes this, voila, that same information that was entered on the project site now is available in Excel. It's bi-directional synchronization. Who doesn't know about this feature?
Does the bi-directional work in 2010?
Absolutely. So it starts in Excel 03, SharePoint 03, any possible combination you want, up to 2013. Now, but wait, there's more. That could be on Home Shopping Network for $9.99. So she's looking at her receipts. She's like, oh, you guys didn't spend $500 for a computer, so you guys spent $5,000 for a computer. Not only can she see the data, she can update the information, push the data back out, and now once the data is pushed back out, that same information is available. Let me hit refresh here. That same piece of information would be updated on the project site. Computers, $5,000. So we talk about SharePoint sucks. From this perspective, it doesn't. You know, I know it's a different topic. Here's an adoption advice. When you want users, business users to adopt, don't use the S word. The killer apps of the business is Excel, Outlook, and Word. Start there. Well, you can't do all the fancy stuff there, but start there. After I did this with Miss Betty, I showed her this. She worked on the other 99 projects, and then she had the 101st one. You know how in Excel you create like a summary sheet? You can pull the data and have like a little pivot table, pivot summary report kind of thing. 2 months later, I talked to her. I said, so how's that going, Miss Betty? She goes, oh, thank you, Dux. You can't believe how much faster I can get this done. Instead of 6 hours, now it's cut down to about 3-4 hours. I still have to review their receipts. But I don't have to deal with my email, my inbox, pulling my desktop, creating folders. None of that. Thank you. Now, think about it. Talk about adoption, number one. Start with tools people use. But number two, what's in it for Miss Betty? Right? That's why when somebody asks you, oh, I want to make it look like Ferrari.com. What's in it for you? If it's all fancy, schmancy, pretty, what's the value? But there's value for Miss Betty. She saved time, being more efficient. But there's another piece that we have to think about in the grand scheme of things. Remember I said earlier, there are times that Miss Betty has to stay overtime because she has to get this done. Y'all with me? As far as I know, she doesn't. And how much does that cost to the company? So Miss Betty, what do you do now that you saved like a couple hours? I learned how to use Facebook. That's a different problem. So when we talk about mapping requirements, so I showed you that whole solution quickly because I want you to see the end result and then how the requirements shape out, right? So from a business level, we talked about what's the need. Okay, the need is we already have SharePoint. SharePoint shall increase finance department's productivity by 15%. That's one use case. Now that's kind of hard to think about. 15%, what's that? So if we take Miss Betty, she spends 6 hours. What's 15% of 6 hours? How many engineers does this pay? 10 hours? It's about an hour, right? An hour. So that's just the minimum requirement. If we can save Miss Betty an hour, that'd be cool. So what's a user requirement? Now, there's going to be a lot of user requirements around this because that's pretty vague, but I picked that one use case, right? One of the things that Miss Betty mentioned to me, the user shall be able to retrieve and synchronize project expense information in SharePoint from Excel without relying on email. It's kind of long, but guys, you have to be specific, okay? Now, if somebody asks you, well, Dux, why do we need that user requirement again? Well, there's a couple of things in play here, but in the end, it has to support that business requirement. While we know there's a lot of different ways to do this, another aspect you have to consider is adoption. I mean, we've seen that. We throw SharePoint at people, nobody's using it. There's all the ROI stuff, but if people don't use it, ROI doesn't do jack squat. Right? Now, to make that happen, what are the system requirements, technology requirements? Microsoft Excel shall be able to synchronize information with a SharePoint site or a project site, however you want to define that. But where am I going here, Dan? When we talk requirements, it has to trickle down from a business need. So now if I ask my analyst or my resource or someone in IT, why are you making this synchronized Excel stuff, all that? Because it needs to support that user requirement. What's the big deal with that user requirement? Because it has to support this business requirement. Y'all follow me? So that's just kind of a quick overview of how all those mapping works. But now I want to get into the crux of this conversation. Okay, docs, I see it, I get it, but how do you do all this? How do you do all this? What are the tips, techniques, and ideas that I can take advantage of? So in the SharePoint world, when you develop requirements, it's iterative. What it means is it's a constant cycle, right? It's not a step-by-step as how you would with traditional technology implementation or development. And more importantly, it's almost always a quick delivery. If you're in a 5-year SharePoint project, something is wrong. You don't have to raise your hand. But the technique in developing the requirements for business requirements, user requirements, system requirements are pretty much the same. These are the 4 key steps which I'll spend time on. But keep in mind, it's iterative. You might start off with the business, and then you can start user, and might go back to the business. But these are 4 key elements of building or developing these requirements. Step 1. The first step in developing requirements is the process of elicitation. Okay? Now, I joked yesterday, I said elicitation is one of those words like, are you smarter than a 5th grader kind of thing. What does elicitation mean? Notice I did not use the word gathering. Gathering is order taking. Again, no offense, but that's what we do today. We take orders. How do you like your SharePoint? Either that, or the business would say, give me a wiki, give me a survey, give me a blog. Okay. I was advising an organization who was going to roll out SharePoint to 80,000 people. And they're like, Dux, what do you think? We got these site template surveys, we're going to stick it in wikis. I go, ooh, why? ¿Por qué? Oh, Dux, we want to do the enterprise social thing, Yammer this, newsfeed that. Okay? What does enterprise social mean to Miss Betty in accounting? Y'all with me? Do you feel the love? And I know it's a hard battle, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of these buzzwords, even your executives, go to some event or some conference, read on CIO.com. Yeah, we got to do this enterprise social thing. ¿Por qué? So when you elicit, here are the 5 things that you essentially do. Number 1, what do I need to know? Very fundamental. You don't go in cold. So just like my example in Miss Betty, right? They're using SharePoint for project management. We could have just left and let them be. But then I poked around. I know, you know what? I know for projects, there's processes, there's expenses. Who deals with your expenses? How do you do expenses? Yeah, we deal with accounting. We send this stuff. So you need to have a backstory or an understanding of what you're getting into. You don't just go to HR, here's SharePoint. You don't just go to project managers, here's SharePoint. You got to know some context. And in fact, sometimes part of elicitation, what the word elicitation means, it's gathering and understanding. It's gathering and making sense of it. In a lot of cases, we blame the users. The users don't know what they want. Enough of that. Step up, IT. No more whining about users don't know what they want. They exactly don't know what they want. That's why we're here. But our job is not to take orders. It's to throw it out. Where do I get this information? Yeah? So, expenses. Okay, so let me talk to accounting. Let me talk to Miss Betty. Miss Betty, so what do you do and all that? And it doesn't mean that if they say, yeah, I'd like to automate this, dig deeper. What are the tools they use, Miss Betty? Oh, Excel. I love Excel. Nothing but Excel. Get the information, organize what you know, and then do you have enough? If not, go back. Poke around some more. Because sometimes people don't tell you the big picture. Not intentionally, but it's just how people behave and think. They're busy. Y'all with me? Pardon my southern twang. I come from the deep south. Manila, Philippines. That is. Southeast Asia. The goal of this requirements process in SharePoint is to build solutions. The goal is not to showcase features. Very important. SharePoint breeds contempt. I'm not ashamed to say that. However, familiarity breeds adoption. You can quote me on that. Tweet that. What do you mean, Dux? Familiarity. Familiarity with what? People can tell you more about what their pain points are, their challenges, the tools they use, versus something foreign. Oh, you want a dashboard? How about Power View? Performance point? They won't say no. They'll just take it. That's why you end up with a bunch of sites and nothing's there but a single file. I think an organization, for some reason, users think they create a SharePoint site to store a file. That's it. Right? The goal is to build solutions. You may have a nice car, nice platform. If nobody knows how to drive it, all they know is ride a bike because it'll take them to work. They'll just leave this in the garage and not do anything with it. Next. So the idea is you elicit requirements, you gather, you understand, you draw out, you organize, and then you take it back, you sit down, and you need to analyze. What's the outcome of analysis? Requirements analysis, listen, requirements analysis is the process of identifying real requirements versus stated requirements. Y'all with me? It's one thing that they say. I'm not saying they're wrong, but your job now is to take all this, make sense of it, and figure out what the real requirements are. Right? So how do you do this? How do we do requirements analysis? So first and foremost, you have to profile users, meaning you got to understand tools they use, groups they're in. Do they have to deal with compliance? Understand the parameters. Right? I was sharing a story yesterday, and the part of profiling has a lot to do with culture as well, organizational culture. In November 2009, I was in the Pentagon. I was briefing IT leaders in the military on the new features of 2010. So I was talking about, metadata, turn store, content ratings, all that good stuff. As I was packing up, the colonel who was escorting me, he was making a comment, content ratings won't work here. I go, why not? You guys know what content ratings are, right? It's like Amazon stars and all. Who in their right minds would rank a 4-star journal's content 1 star? Not going to happen. His content will always be 5 stars. It's just the nature of the politics. And what's going to end up happening is we're going to contribute more noise and irrelevancy to search. Might as well not even use it. So that's what I mean by profiling. Understand their organization, their culture, what they do, what they have to subscribe to. And then next, you model the requirements. Thus, how do you model this? Let me show you an example. So part of the work we do a lot is in the area of using SharePoint and related technologies for project management. I get customers saying, hey, you wrote the book on SharePoint project management, help us with that. Or we want to use project or project server, help us with that. Again, I ask, okay, right? So, after we elicit requirements, we try to analyze it. We go back to the customer and we said, okay, just to make sure we understand this correctly, based on the requirements we've elicited, we've drawn out, we've modeled what the process looks like. And there's still some gaps, so we need to elicit some more. We need your help. So this is an example of a swim lane, what's called a swim lane diagram of some project management process. So based on how the customer is describing it to me or to us, okay, Dux, the way our project happens here is some sponsor starts it off, right? Once it's approved, a project manager is assigned. Once a project manager is assigned, the project manager will have to create a schedule, pick the team members, figure out if we have enough resources, and start assigning all these tasks, etc. And then, as you can see, just going through this process helps us understand what the needs truly are. And this is very, very powerful because what ends up happening, a lot of the stuff they told me up front may not be relevant. Y'all with me? Because the need here is to have a project management system to support your project management activities, right? Nowhere here does it say make it look pretty. Even better. What's interesting is you do this process with a business or your customer, you will find, while they don't admit to it, a lot of basic processes don't exist. SharePoint is a great platform. Next, you got to do this. And it's kind of hard. I know you have to use a very sophisticated tool called paper and pen, sometimes Visio. But here's the other thing that you've just done here. Once you model this, guess what? Now we've identified roles and responsibilities. We're saying now the project manager is responsible to do all that if this solution is deployed. He needs also to learn all that stuff. Not only we define roles and responsibilities, we also define potentially relevant training. So anything you do around modeling doesn't go to waste. Okay? Now, next you do gap analysis. After you model it and you start potentially figuring out the solution, you understand the gap, right? Going back to Miss Betty's story early on, before I talked to her, you know, in my mind, I was like, that's easy. Let's just create a custom expense list on the site, have the user come here, update it. Done. But then when I talked to her, I don't use browsers. I'm stuck in the 90s. I'm all about client apps. I'm all about Excel. So what's the gap? Oh, the initial solution I thought of just doesn't work. I got to go back and figure out what that gap looks like and then identify the real requirements. This is another example, and this is a different kind of diagram. Earlier, what I showed you is the swim lane diagram. This is a diagram for a process flow. This is a customer we work with. This is actually very interesting. So this is more of a customized SharePoint solution. They are a large organization with a lot of partners around the world. And they schedule partner training because they sell their products to partners. They have training, conferences, events, and all that. And how they do it originally is through Excel. People email it around, which is not great. And they said, you know, we want to automate this, make it better. So we have some kind of event registration, event request. And as they're describing the process, so we built this, we worked with them, we drew out this process flow. And based on this process flow, we were able to implement it with SharePoint. When do you stop? Right? When do you stop? The other challenge with requirements development is it could go crazy. Because again, users are being users. Ooh, I want this. And then suddenly they see another bright and shiny object. I want that. Marketing showed me this. Oh, I want mobile. How do you know when to stop? How do you know which one is important or not important, or which one that you do now and what do you keep for later? Right? So the next step is you validate your requirements. This allows, look at this, allows your user, your customer to confirm and prioritize the real requirements. What I'm saying here, gang, is it's not our job to decide for them. We do what we do, we facilitate, we figure it out, but in the end, we show it back to them and say, it can't be done based on the parameters you said, so let's figure out what's important. Y'all with me? So I'm going to show you a little tool. I showed this yesterday, but you could do this for requirements development too. And again, everything I'm showing you, I'll send it to you as well. So this is a project that we worked on. We helped a county. They have 8,000 people. They have SharePoint, but it's just been sitting there, and they really want to take advantage of it. So we helped them figure out what the roadmap would look like, what to deploy, what to use first. So during this stage, right, we're trying to help them prioritize based on business needs what features in SharePoint we can use. Okay? So how did we do this? We go through this exercise called education engineering. It's kind of like Elicitation, but in a bigger scale. So I work with all the different business units in this county. Operations, HR, finance. And really I spend time with them just talking to them about their pain points. Right? So just like the whole Miss Sally example, I just poke and say, hey, I know you guys are a county. I know you have a lot of processes and whatnot. I know a lot of them are manual. What are some of the manual stuff that you wish you could improve or that can be automated? Oh, we don't have enough time, but we'll try. So one is SOP creation. So they explain this to me how it works. We go to the network share, we open Excel, we email it around. So as they're describing these processes and their pain points, I'm documenting this, and at a high level, tying in a SharePoint feature or capability that would support to improve that. Y'all follow me? So here's the deal though. You gotta know your SharePoint, right? So a little drop down, just at a high level, this might change, but just kind of tying it in. So operations has all these needs. HR, collaboration, risk management, onboarding, blah, blah, blah. So as they describe it, I type the SharePoint feature. And again, all of these are out of the box. In case you didn't get the memo, SharePoint's all about out of the box until you can't do it. If you can't do out of the box, third-party products, next step. Custom development is the last resort. So if you're working with some SharePoint expert and the first thing they tell you is, yeah, I can custom develop Visual Studio, poser alert. And tell them Doug said that. Because that's the intent of this platform. This platform is so vast, there's a lot of things you could do. I know there's exceptions, but as much as possible, out of the box. So in this exercise, once I kind of gathered all this, the next step is I ask them, what's important for you? Meaning, if there's operations, if there's a business need we address, like right now, we improve, we automate, what would it be? Docs, this whole accident report review process. If we can automate that, that's huge, right? And then next, emergency communications, blah, blah, blah. So once that's done, now I flip the view where I list the department and I list all the SharePoint features that was extracted based on the business need conversation. Y'all follow me? And then I just document, because I want to measure these things, because without measurement, you won't know what's important and what's not. What's the priority? How important is this? 5 is very important. Your list, your libraries will always be a 5. What about the size and effort to do this? To build all the lists for HR, it's a 2. What does a 2 mean? I have my standardization here because this depends on the skill set of the people who's going to do this stuff. So this is based on my team. A 2 means it's a 3-person week job to build that. What about the impact to the business? 3 means it's high impact. It's going to help address a lot of their needs. How reusable is this thing? 1, it's a one-time use. 2, it's reusable with HR. 3, it's reusable throughout the company. You can templatize it and everybody else can use it. Then we have a total value of the business where I take the priority, the impact, the reusability minus the effort. It's a 9. Y'all with me? Then I bring the business in because requirements validation has to do with us working with the business. This is what SharePoint means. So if you told the Windows admin on top of his day job to roll out SharePoint to 5,000 people in 3 months, and this is what it means, there's no freaking possible way. What say you, business? How do we prioritize this? But then we're not done. We also have to look at the reality of IT. How much can IT do and not do? If IT would build all those lists for HR, it's a 1. Again, a 1 might be somebody's time for 3 weeks. What about the support impact? Monthly, we need 20 hours or whatever that measurement needs. What about training impact? Because as we all know, we put stuff out, it's not going to live forever. That's the total impact to IT. And now you can talk to business and say, well, even if it's a 9 business, it's a 3 to IT. We can't do it because we don't have budget for that for this fiscal year. But here's where the magic happens. Now that you can make a case that it's valuable to the business will say, no, we want that. IT will say, well, we can't do that. It's a 3. How about this business? Since it's valuable for you, why don't you pony up? It's not a bad thing. And I think that's something that we don't do today. Yeah, IT is responsible for putting in the platform for business-specific solutions, and if it's going to address business needs, pony up. We should be bold about that. Y'all with me? We can't just walk and say, oh, we don't have the budget. No, you should do it. Well, we'll figure it out. No. Show me the money. Is this helpful? Only to a couple people. Is this helpful?
Yes.
All right, good. I need some validation here. Huh? Put it on paper. Once you validate all this thing, document it, right? So having a requirements document communicates the intent, the process you went through. Everything you discuss should be in there. Let me show you a sample document here, gang. I've got a requirements document for an intranet. I scrubbed my customer's name, but this is a full-blown requirements document that has all the elements of what I just described. You guys interested in this? Just don't copy and paste, okay? Or replace, find and replace. I mean, use this as like a model or a template. Now, one more tip for how do you write these requirements, Ross? You know, while I have formal background in these stuff, to me, the simpler it is, the better. Unless you're bound to write it in a specific way, the way I would recommend you start writing requirements is this. Regardless if it's business, user, or technology requirements. Some subject shall be able to do some capability within some criteria. That's it. If you don't put the constraint in the end, that means it's going to work 100% of the time. So let me show you this. SharePoint shall increase finance department's productivity by 15%. SharePoint, subject, shall increase finance department's productivity, capability by 15% criteria. User shall be able to, subject, retrieve synchronized project dispensary and share from Excel capability without relying on email criteria. Everybody with me? Now here's the other thing before I wrap up. Especially when you write user requirements, what did you just do as well? You just develop all your UAT cases or user acceptance test cases, which we don't do. What do you mean, docs? Here's what you do. When you gather user requirements, they tell you all this stuff. They go, okay, once this is done, you have to document. When we're done, we're going to go back to this list of user requirements, and we're going to test every single thing, making sure it works. It satisfies your need. Y'all with me? And then when they start saying, well, I don't like how it looks, I don't see it here. Who did you talk to? It's not on this paper. Now, it's not a bad thing if you do another project around branding. One more thing that you need to drill into your user set. SharePoint has to be perceived as an essential business tool and not a marketing brochure website. People go to work every day, they use Outlook, Excel, Word as an essential business tool. Nobody comes up here and says, hey Brian, I don't like how Outlook looks. Can you change how Outlook looks? You ever get that request? No. Because people know it's a business tool that they need. You should shift the thinking around SharePoint that this is an essential tool that can help you with your job, helps you get your work done faster, better, easier. Now, I know there's a whole other aspect of SharePoint around branding, intranet, corporate communication, which is cool. The whole, how it looks is great. But you're talking about addressing business needs, so it has to be perceived as a business tool. What do you guys think? Useful?
Yeah.
All right.